Strange as it sounds, my first contact, I guess, or exposure to Chinese culture was a TV miniseries by the name of Monkey Magic, where I got to obviously meet Pigsy, Sandy and Monkey.
Oh, you're greeting. What are you doing? Peking duck?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Yes, you like. I know that you like it.
Last time on Love Knows No Bounds, our 4 cross-cultural couples shared a few family secrets and proved once again that even in supposedly enlightened times, the battle for acceptance still needs to be won.
It doesn't really matter what sort of culture it is. It's more of at the individual person level.
This week we ask, what does it mean to be Australian? What does it mean to be Chinese? And why do we still care?
I feel half Chinese and half Western because my dad comes from England, my mum comes from China.
The country Richard comes from is very different from the country I'm come from. But both our countries are very traditional countries. We got a very strong culture.
I think probably the closest I got to Chinese culture was going into the Chinese takeaway and having a takeaway when I was a student. That was about as close as I got to it.
For Dawn and Richard's son Leo, neither China or England is home. For him, growing up in 2 cultures is normal.
To him, just like everything is come natural. Yeah, and now the things I'm doing may be different from father, but for him, he wouldn't think that's the culture difference. For him, he just say that's mother different, and father is different. Mother and father different. Yeah, it's nothing to do with culture.
Whereas adults might choose to look past the obvious physical and cultural differences between East and West, children live in a far simpler world, as Ting recalls from her own school days in suburban Melbourne.
I guess there were still small little groups, even amongst kids, that did seem to be skewed towards your ethnic background still. So you would have your Aussie skips, but at the time in primary school you don't really realise that it's used in a derogatory way. You just use it as a reference, and it isn't until you grow, you get older and you realise, oh, that was actually not a very good way of calling someone.
I think when I was quite young, I didn't really have any friends or know anyone that was Asian. When I got to high school though, I had a few Asian friends.
In primary school and high school, I guess I didn't really have that many negative experiences, just a little bit of teasing here and there, but nothing that I would consider outright bullying or racist or anything like that.
One of the minority Chinese people within my primary school, it was a little bit hard, being the only person, and I did experience a little bit of teasing and racial vilification, and that did carry on a little bit to my early high school years.
And sometimes even with cultural identity, it's also, aside from where you're born, it's also, where you grow up and, the experiences that you have and the people that are around you and how they do really shape you.
Someone asked me, who am I? Am I Australian, am I Chinese? And I was like, I'm actually Australian born Chinese, so I'm both.
For Marcella, coming to live in Australia represented an opportunity to put some distance between herself and her native Czech culture.
We try to go to the Czech community house and try to look for some Czech people, but what I found at the time is too many old people and it wasn't really for me. So in a way, I moved away from the Czech culture and, little by little, year by year then, I think I blended into the Chinese culture more than into anything else. Maybe in the past it was Chinese.
Much as Australia prides itself on its multicultural society, it would be naive to believe that racism doesn't still thrive in the margins. However, psychologist Eve Ash believes that racism is not a terminal condition.
I think racism is a disease that for some people is curable and for others is so ingrained that it is just very difficult to change people. But I think it's very important to not write people off because they make racist remarks, because they seem very bigoted. I mean, they're the people that can be turned around.
As the owner of several cross-cultural dating sites, Rob Thompson believes that personal contact is the best cure.
Especially when a child or grandchild in the family is intermarries to someone from a different culture, then instead of it being, that race, it's someone with a name.
I think there are times where racism can be something that actually pushes the couple together more to defend their own, livelihood and the decision that they've made. And I think there are times where the racism is so intolerable that they are better off cutting that person from their life, because if you have a negative force constantly in your life on a daily or a weekly or an ongoing basis, we only live once.
With the prevalence of social networking, Facebooking, etc., it's global. It's lots of mingling going on, and people, I think when they get to communicate and connect with people on a one-to-one basis, those perceived barriers of, as you said, race, religion, etc., they start to melt as people realise that they've got a lot more in common.
My understanding about Western culture has been changed a lot since I meet Western people in person. So I had no idea about Western people. All I learned from a newspaper or television.
Myself, before I met him, I did have some kind of stereotype of Western people towards their relationship. That's the one that
Claire's mother-in-law Norma grew up in the relatively Anglo-Saxon surrounds of regional Tasmania. And for her, the biggest differences are not cultural, but personal.
Two people that come from English backgrounds, English homes, live in the same street, and they can be very different.
We know the society is formed by the family unit. Yeah, and so if the family became multicultural, that means the society will become multicultural.
The value judgments we all make about other cultures can often be unconscious and frequently misguided.
When they observe the different culture, they often use their own experience and knowledge to judge that culture. Yeah, and that is not often. It's just not right. That's correct.
They could be more like you than the people that live up the street, as far as values and outlooks, and aren't values more important than skin colour?